listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. Ali, Mags and Kev are here. The best three are back together. The band is here. Kev is quietly saying go birds. And lads, we are hotly entering playoff season. So we've got one more week left of the regular season. How are you boys feeling? I'll start with you, Mags.
Shitting it. I was telling you boys off camera, maybe the worst week of fantasy football I think I've ever had. If I had a team that was the 1 or 2 seeds, which, you know, you boys know is a hell of a lot. I think I lost every single game by that. I don't know if they have the reports run yet. I've been too sad to look, but I'm going to see a hell of a lot of most points in loss for the second week in a row. And I'm going to be real mad about it. But how are you doing, Ali?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thank you, mate. Glad to be back with you boys as we wrap up almost the regular season now. Had a mixed week. Generally was pretty good. But yeah, there was a couple of spots where the number 2 seed and I've dropped down to the number 3 seed with tough losses, even high scoring losses, which was difficult to take, but not too bad on the whole. And yeah, we'll bring in the legend that is Kev, who is, I think, the cause of some of your pain, Mags, in one of those leagues with the tough loss with the stud that was Jerry Jeudy going off the other night. Kev, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, look, apart from that league, I'm doing fine. Yeah, it's a team where I'm rebuilding. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy had to spoil my fun in that one. What a great guy he is. But yeah, we've got the 3 greatest guys of all time on this show tonight. So we're looking forward to it. Week 13. Yeah, there was some elements to it which were unlucky, but hey, we're here to get you through the wreckage and get you positive going into a big week 14, which is going to be so crucial for all of us out there.
Certainly is, mate. I think this is by far one of the most important weeks of the whole season. It's jockeying for those buy positions, or can you scrape into the playoffs? You don't want to be missing out. So really important you get things right this week. But yeah, we are here to recap week 13 as we head into week 14 of the Dynasty season. So we'll start with you, Mags, and your topic, or your first topic of tonight's show, is going to be 0 to hero. So do explain more.
Yeah, 0 to hero. Just the last sort of 3 weeks, we've seen quite a few people, you know, emerge from the wilderness and become matchup winners. Players that have potentially got your team ready to attack the playoffs, and names that we maybe weren't expecting to be so amazing going into the week. And no one else to start off with other than Jameis Winston himself. The last 3 weeks, he's climbed from quarterback 33 overall to quarterback 2 overall, of course, really helped out by that huge performance that helped put a knife in my heart in so many leagues. But, you know, you still got to give credit to Jameis Winston. Even though he come out, torched a lot of my teams, you got to love the guy. Just the way he comes out, the way he speaks, praying that he won't throw any more pick sixes. He's got a lot of teams praying that they don't come up against him right now because he is torching people at quarterback 2. At running back, maybe a name less surprising, but one that's been showing a lot of progress going from running back 15 all the way up to running back 2 is Josh Jacobs. So he's someone that, you know, maybe some people thought there was writing on the wall. Maybe they thought with Marshawn Lloyd coming in, that could be Jacobs starting to slow down. Lloyd obviously had injury concerns, so Jacobs is taking the ball and quite literally run with it. And as the weather gets worse up there in Green Bay, expect him to keep on trundling on. He's someone coming good for your teams. Wide receiver was heavily mentioned on the Wildcard Rewind show, but he gets some love here as well. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine went from wide receiver 71 to wide receiver 8. Yes, I could mention Jerry Jeudy here, but I hate him too much. So we'll talk about Nick Westbrook-Akina instead. The touchdown machine. I think Lewis said it best. Is like, you can't watch a highlight video of him and not see a touchdown. I think that's the only thing he does. But if you're going to do one thing in the NFL, why not make it be scoring touchdowns? And then tight end, shout out my guy, Noah Gray. Tight end 4 on the last 3 weeks. Really looking quite good, actually. Don't think he is the long-term successor for Travis Kelce out there. I think he's the beneficiary of, a lot of moving pieces in that Chiefs offense, and Noah Gray kind of the guy that is open and free all of the time. But he's gone from tight end 27 all the way up to tight end number 4 on the season. But boys, the main point of this is, do you try, if your trade window is still open, to capitalize on this hot streak for these players? Or, in the nicest way possible, is this a fluke for a lot of these guys? Like, is this just pure luck, Kev?
Great questions, Max. Jameis Winston. We'll kick off with Jameis Winston. What a guy. Easy to root for. I think you know exactly what you're getting with him. And we mentioned a few shows ago back that these QB profiles, they're likely to have a really good shot at getting a job with what's coming out. And we'll talk more about that later on in the show. But Winston's someone that's super interesting. I think Josh Jacobs, he's done great. He's benefited from a better situation. And look, he's RB1 numbers to finish the season. You can probably bank on with the weather and the type of player he is. And then Nick Westbrook-Akina. What an absolute enigma. I'm definitely not buying into this guy. The fact that he's had 20 receptions this season for 8 touchdowns is just absolutely mind-blowing. Like, those numbers for a tight end would be silly. But for a wide receiver, which tend to have less red zone opportunities than your specialist tight end, it's absolutely crazy. Like, I think, if you're on your best ball sides, fantastic. But any time you've got to set a lineup, how can you feel comfortable banking on a touchdown-dependent wide receiver? He's one I'm avoiding. Like, if I've got him, I'm trying to sell him, but I've not, because his NWA sounds like some sort of offence. Like, that's an acronym for an offence, or very close to a former rap group. But Noah Gray as well. I'll finish with Noah Gray. He's someone I highlighted last week in an article at DLF as someone that's a priority ad on waivers. I think he's got to be rostered in all Dynasty leagues. The Smeezy outs, Kelce retires, Kelce gets injured. In the event of that, I think, especially in the injury, he's a tight end 1. And then if he becomes a starter next season, if Kelce retires or whatever, then you're going to see a massive spike in value. So no Gray's someone I don't expect to see him on waivers anymore. But you could do a lot worse. Let's say that Kelce's a massive part of your Dynasty playoffs. Go out and get Noah Gray for 3rd. Like, just get that in. Like, I'm not an advocate of handcuffing in general, but if it's a key piece and it's this time of the season for cheap, there's some outs there where Noah Gray can give you something for those last few weeks, especially if it's going to be a late 3rd.
Yeah, I like that, Kev. I do like that, Noah Gray. And I think it's a fair deal all round, to be honest. The guy that's got him is probably happy to flip him for a 3rd with the spike in value. And you can, handcuff Travis Kelce for now and for potentially next season as well. So, I like the picks here, Mags. I think Josh Jacobs has been fairly decent this season. It's a shame about the rookie going down because I had big hopes on him, but fair play to Jacobs. And when it's been really, really difficult to select what wide receiver to have in Green Bay, well, Josh Jacobs has been cleaning up at running back. And Jameis Winston, what a guy. I mean, this is a guy that I'm happy to root for now that he's not quarterback of my actual NFL team, because he's very difficult to root for when he's destroying any chance that you've got of winning a game by throwing pick sixes. But what a guy now. And I think, to be honest, more on the sell side, I think when these players have a period of 2 or 3 weeks where they spike, I think that creates an opportunity to sell Like if you had Nick Westbrook-Akine, the first 4 weeks of the season, he didn't receive a single pass, wasn't even targeted, I don't think. And if you could flip him now for a late second or a third on a contender, I think you've done really well, and you're happy for that. So I think it's an opportunity to sell these guys that are spiking towards the playoffs when people get desperate. You've got week 14 by apocalypse coming up. Perhaps people are desperate for a quarterback. They've got Lamar or Jaden Daniels, the likes of those. Bo Nix, I think, is this week as well. Maybe they'll pay you, over the odds to acquire Jameis Winston to fill in for their playoff push. So, really like the selections here. And buying opportunities and selling opportunities definitely created.
Love the Jameis Winston emoji as well.
That is cool. I have to say, that is really decent, Kev. Well done. He is. And we're moving on to another Superman, Kev. And I absolutely love this topic, Kev, because this is definitely something that I implement in Dynasty. We're leaning into embrace risk at the quarterback position. So explain more.
I mean, perfect segue, really, going from Jameis Winston to embracing risk at quarterback. That wasn't planned. We could say that we're experts and everything. That was just completely off the cuff. We're not that smart. Embracing risk at QB. I think before we get into the meat of it, it's really important that any content creators out there, anybody that's listening, they should always think about reviewing what's happened, what they've learned from maybe particular takes they've had or stances they've had on people's or processes, and then look to make a change and implement it in the future. I think one of the things I look back on as maybe an area in the season where I've missed an opportunity is this embracing risk at QB. And what I'm talking about is about that spike potential. So when the future looked really bleak for a few guys I'm going to mention, everybody seemed to be out on them. The values absolutely plummeted. And I guess one thing I want to take moving forward is just be a little bit braver and actually, where these opportunities come up, be aggressive, attack them, spend the buy them as a buy low, and just be really open to a range of outcomes in your thoughts and your process. And the two guys that really stand out are Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. The second year guys that have struggled, lost the job, look absolutely terrible, and they've hit the bench. Now, I think at that point, everybody seems to be out on them. I didn't see many trade transactions with people brave enough to acquire them. So that's a missed opportunity for me in my Dynasty leagues, because both are looking well improved after the stint on the bench. And you've got to say they've got a great shot at maintaining the jobs into next season. So that's something I'm taking forward. I think there's also a shout to someone like Russell Wilson, who he was on the bench to begin the season. Granted, he was named the starter, but when Fields was winning games, looking great, I didn't see many people going after Russell Wilson either. So my learn is be aggressive, look at the landscape that's coming up, the incoming rookie class, some of the current starters in the league. There's like people like Winston have got to have a big shot at getting a job next year. These guys like Young and Anthony Richardson, they're players that are probably going to have starting jobs. So one thing I want to highlight was these guys are doing great that have been risky and had a value plummet earlier on in the season. Be braver and embrace the risk.
Yeah, love that, Kev. I think that's great advice as well, and really quite rare that we see two quarterbacks benched mid-season that have come back and look so good. And I just really wish that rookie quarterbacks had a chance to come in and sit behind a veteran and just learn for whether it's half a season like Drake May, who's come in and looked great, whether it's the Green Bay quarterback, Jordan Love, that come in and sat for all that time. You got to think of Michael Penix as well. He's sitting right now, and he's going to come in and no doubt look great with all the weapons he's got. I just wish that these teams, they weren't under so much pressure to win straight away, that they could invest in their rookie. And because these guys just start so little games, especially in terms of Anthony Richardson. He's 20 plus games into his career, not NFL career, just career in general is just absolutely insane. But yeah, I agree in embracing the risk, because ultimately, if an investment goes wrong, you invest in these players that may be a bit boom bust, you're going to be back at the bottom of the league. So you're going to be getting them high risk, high round picks. Once again, you don't want to invest in players that are safe, that are just going to get you to 8th, 7th position in the table, because ultimately that's the worst place to finish in. So I really like the idea of embracing risk at quarterback. And yeah, I've seen this season more than ever, really, quarterbacks are traded far more often, I've found, this year than my previous years playing Dynasty. It kind of been, when I started out Dynasty several years ago, you sort of had your quarterback. Quarterbacks didn't really move around the league either in real life. So people didn't really trade the quarterbacks as much. It was impossible to trade for quarterbacks. But now it seems to be a little bit easier. And yeah, I really like the fact that you can go for a quarterback, perhaps one that's sitting on a bench like Russell Wilson was to start the season. And when Justin Fields was in, turned out to be a really good decision. And yeah, Russell Wilson's looking great. So yeah, I really like the idea of that, Kev. Go for a future first or a future pick, and embrace a bit of risk at a quarterback that maybe is on the downward slope but has the ability to spike like AR. Because ultimately, if Richardson now comes back, secures that role for 2025 and looks really, really good sort of halfway through next season, then you've got a guy that's worth 2 or 3 first-round picks. So yeah, embrace the risk like it.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And then, like, I think sometimes we get a bit of a false narrative that there are only so many like of these blue chip like prospects at quarterback, and if you have an elite quarterback, then like that's the be all and end all. And I'm kind of just looking at the rankings here, and let's look at the top of the list. These are the guys this year that have been elite. Lamar Jackson, obviously, is elite now. Let's not forget, he came into the league, he slid in the draft. There were huge question marks about him as a rookie. So he's at question marks. Joe Burrow, his hands are too small. All of that jazz, right? Remember that? There were huge question marks about Joe Burrow at one stage. Jalen Hurts got dropped, had to go to Oklahoma in college, went in the second round of the NFL draft. Huge question marks about Jalen Hurts. Josh Allen, a project player. Is he ever going to make it? What's going to happen? Huge question marks about him. Baker Mayfield, completely dropped by a franchise, had a complete resurgence, had to go through Carolina for some reason to get there. Now he's at the Bucs. He's absolutely killing it. Jaden Daniels, 5 years in college, got dropped, was never really looking like a good prospect. Come into the NFL. He's too old. He can't take hits. Quarterback 6 in the year. Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers, forgotten about as a prospect in Dynasty, QB7 on the year. Tua Tagovailoa, can't stay healthy, concussions, all that. Bo Nix, maligned, taken in the second round of your Dynasty drafts. Sam Darnold, starting in the Sixth Sense. This is our top guys here. And then you look at who's next. It's Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. This isn't like just random names I'm picking up. This is quarterback 1 through 11, like top to bottom. Every single one of them, huge question marks beside them at one stage in their career. So, Kev, I'm right with you. Why the hell not go out and try and buy some of these guys? Because you could have got Sam Darnold off the waiver wire. You could have got Baker Mayfield for a third. You probably could have got Jordan Love for a second round pick at any kind of given stage. And look at them all now, top 10 quarterbacks. So you have to take the risk.
Yeah, so go out there and spend a first-round pick on Deshaun Watson. Is that what we're saying?
Absolutely, yes. Lock it in. Get Jameis Winston as a throw-in.
It's right, though. That's the sort of profile you want to be targeting. Like, if you can pay a third for him, would someone take a third for him? Would someone take a late second for Watson?
Well, this is it. I mean, everybody laughs about the situation with Watson and how he could be finished, but that third round pick that you're spending right now you're probably never going to hit on it anyway. So why not throw it on someone like that has that profile, that's done it before, that you just never know.
Make it
Love
rain.
it. So we'll move on to my topic of tonight, which is targeting players for the playoffs. So this is not going to be Deshaun Watson, spoiler alert. But I've selected 4 that I'll run through here, 1 at each position, obviously. And I'll start off with a guy we spoke about tonight, his actual teammate. So not Nick Westbrook-Akine. I'll go for Calvin Ridley, who I think is an awesome target for the playoffs. When you look at the schedule coming up, you could not have made it any better. He's got Jacksonville twice, he's got Cincinnati, and he's got Indy. I mean, that is absolute perfection. And while his teammate is having all the headlines with the 8 touchdowns in the last 8 games, I think that Calvin Ridley is slightly going under the radar because of his fantasy output's not been there for the last couple of weeks. But only look back, say, 3 weeks, and he had 2 or 3 games where he spiked. And that's exactly what we're looking for in the playoffs. And look at the quarterback, Will Levis. All right, yeah, people are, been laughing at him this season, but he's actually quietly been much better the last few games, and he's thrown multiple touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 weeks. The offense is actually looking a lot better. As well as that, the defense has regressed majorly. So the offense is always playing catch up, whereas they were good at the start of the season. Their defense has really fallen off now. So there's plenty of targets and volume to go round. Ridley still the number 1 target there. He's averaging 8.5 targets per game this season. So ultimately, if you can buy for a mid to late second for Calvin Ridley, there's someone that you can put in your flex spot, your wide receiver spot. I think that's a great buy for the playoffs. A quarterback, this is a disclosure because this guy's not going to be cheap, but I think Kyler Murray is someone that his playoff schedule's looking really, really juicy as well. New England, Carolina, the Rams, who he already had the quarterback 1 performance of against in week 2, I believe. But he's been really disappointing lately. So I just think there could be managers out there that head into the playoffs, perhaps with Kyler Murray, that could be a little bit nervous. But he did reconnect with Marvin Harrison Jr. this week, which was great to see them hook up again. Still cannot believe that Trey McBride has not had a receiving touchdown this season, despite that hookup that they've got. And I just think he's the sort of guy that I want to go after because of that juicy playoff schedule. And then you look at the opposite, really difficult playoff schedules. Jared Goff's got the number 1 hardest playoff schedule for fantasy points given up at the position. So if I could trade up from Jared Goff to Kyler Murray, I think that's a good move. Brock Purdy, all right, he's on the downward slope right now. But if I could pay up to get to Kyler, I'd do that. Another one is CJ Stroud, straight up, because he's just not performing right now, despite having Nico Collins back. So like Kyler Murray, in terms of running back, David Montgomery, someone that I want to target for the playoffs. The 3rd best playoff schedule for running back. They've got Buffalo, the Bears, and the 49ers that are trash right now. And actually, it's been Montgomery that's led the Lions running back room the last few weeks. He had 21 rushing attempts this week for 88 yards, caught 3 passes for 36 yards for the 2nd week running. You also had Gibbs with a key fumble this week when he looks like he was about to score. So perhaps they go more for Montgomery like they did at the second half of the game. And I just think in terms of Montgomery and Gibbs, the actual fantasy output is very, very similar. But people are, if they want to acquire Gibbs, you're having to pay multiple 1st-round picks. If you want to try and acquire David Montgomery, you can probably get him for less than the 1st-round pick right now. So I just think heading into the playoffs, he's really hot. This offensive line is elite. The team absolutely loves him. He's locked into a contract, so he's there again for next year. So I can't see what's not to love with David Montgomery heading into the playoffs. And then finally, tight end. I mean, this was difficult because you're not really looking to buy a tight end at this point of the season or pay up for a tight end. But I just think TJ Hawkinson, he's got a really, really nice schedule as well. He's got home to Chicago next, who he absolutely torched in week 12 in his return, 114 yards. He's got Seattle that was torched by Trey McBride in week 12, something like 133 yards. Then they've got Green Bay, who was torched by Jonnu Smith this week, over 100 yards. So just think he's ramping up from his injury. TJ Hawkinson's almost been the forgotten guy because it's been Addison that's been going off recently. Obviously, Justin Jefferson there as well. But I just think TJ Hawkinson is a top 7, top 8 option at the tight end position for the rest of the season. and you could probably get him for less than the first round pick. So in terms of the tight ends, I would be targeting Hockenson. And out of them 4 guys, who would be your favourite one to try and acquire, lads?
Ooh, good question. This is, so let's think. We have Ridley, Murray, Monty, and Hawkinson in there. I mean, well, obviously, Kyler Murray's the most valuable asset, right? But I'll try and put that aside. I've got all of these players somewhere or another in Dynasty in one lineup or another, and the one that I can put in somewhere and always feel pretty safe. David Montgomery doesn't worry me at all. I'm always happy putting in David Montgomery. And I think the value there that you can get from Montgomery could still, 2 seconds, probably get it done for David Montgomery. Yeah, I think he's the one that stands out to me as the best value with that schedule that they have. The only issue is, do they make the playoffs too early? Do they secure that seed too early? And you actually end up not seeing David Montgomery in that championship week if the Lions are too good, almost. So you need everyone else to keep up with the Lions here just to make sure that Montgomery's definitely going to play.
Yeah, it's difficult, this. I'm kind of gravitating towards Kyler Murray because he's the best player. But then I look at his stats and he's throwing more than 1 passing touchdown. He's done it only twice this year, which is wild. He's had a 2 touchdown game and a 3 touchdown game. So that's kind of putting me off. I think probably TJ Hockenson because he's going to be cheap. I think there's some risk there because he's coming back from an injury, and there's Johnny Munt on the scene that's taking a little bit of work now and then. So I think Hawkinson's someone that you can, I think, get a great price, and I think the further he gets away from his injury, the stronger he's going to be. So I like that move. I think what I would say about targeting in Dynasty, targeting players for the playoffs, it is a redraft move, but actually when you're contending this time of season, you need to start thinking a little bit like a redraft player again. Like we touched on it last week. Think about bye weeks, think about short-term schedules, because a lot of the market is playing that redraft mind. And if you're not following suit and they're making these trades to acquire better matchups and to avoid buys and these little bits, and you're just banking on, it's Dynasty, it's a 3-year game, I'm not bothered, you're going to get left behind. So just be really focused that you might have to switch up your strategy a little bit, be a bit more short term when you're looking for that win. We're not saying be crazy and be over the top and selling Saquon because he's got a tough matchup or anything like that, because some players, they are matchup proof. One of the years, I think Todd Gurley had a typical red matchup in week 17 championship week, and he had like a 40-point game. He won people championship. So we're not saying that, but from the playoff targets, think a little bit about the schedule, and if it's someone that's borderline a flex play for the tight end spot, I think that's where you can really make your money by using that short-term sort of play. And the last thing I'll say, Trey McBride, no touchdowns. I know where they all are. They're in Nick Westbrook-Akina's hands, the bastard.
Correct.
Give him back. Give him back, Nick. What a selfish twat.
Absolutely living up to his name, Nick, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like.
He's had too many mentions on tonight's show. So we're going to go from one guy that is a hero right now, and Nick Westbrook-Akina, if you own him, hero to zero. He's about to have 0 touchdowns for the rest of the season. Isn't that right, Mags?
Zilch. Yeah, absolutely zilch. I believe Paul Pickens putting money on him, so you know that's going to go wrong, right? So that's going to backfire immediately. So obviously at the start, we had a look at my first topic, 0 to hero. We're going to flip it around. If you remember a few weeks ago, we spoke about the running back position, how much better running backs are doing. And then I said I might circle back to some other positions because it's kind of the opposite trend. Wide receiver, good Lord, guys, this is staggering, a little bit staggering on how we're doing. Just compared this year to the exact same stage of the season in last year's season. Jamar Chase right now is wide receiver 1 overall. If you took the same points and put him into last year, he would just be wide receiver 2 behind Tyreek Hill, who was doing historic things. So you think, right, what's the worst that can happen here? It falls off a cliff immediately. Amon-Ra St. Brown is currently wide receiver 2 on the year with 215 points, right? This time last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown had more fantasy points than he does right now, and he was wide receiver 7 then. If you take his points and put them into last year, he would be wide receiver 9. That is crazy. Wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 9, like just in that 1 year window. And it gets worse if you look at the points per game. He would be wide receiver 10 in points per game. Justin Jefferson, who's having, like, this shows Jefferson's having a bad year by his standards. He's wide receiver 3 overall. He would just scrape in as a wide receiver 1 last year at wide receiver 11. And this is our wide receiver 3 this year. So something's going on with the wide receiver position here, because points per game, he would be wide receiver 12, just scraping that wide receiver 1 mark. It's a huge gap. It's a massive gap. For anyone wondering, Drake London, wide receiver 17 points per game as well. So yeah. But boys, I want to pitch it to you. What do you think? Where does this massive gap come from? Do you think it is just, you have to rob Peter to pay Paul a little bit here? The running backs are doing better, so naturally the wide receivers are going to drop a little bit. Kev, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the running back resurgence that we've seen from the veterans, and obviously that correlates with QB play being worse off, and that affects wide receivers in conjunction with that. I think when I look at my best teams in Dynasty, which it's all of them, I'm joking, it's not. There's only a few that I would consider truly elite. They're actually not the traditional Dynasty build, the typical build where it's wide receiver heavy. You've maybe got one hammer running back and then a fill-in at running back 2. My best teams this year are the ones where I'm playing 3 running backs each week. I've got 2 starters. I've got a flex. Sometimes I've had 4 running backs where I've got lucky and hit on a Tracy and an Irvin in a rookie draft, and I had, I don't know, some J.K. Dobbins or something, and DeAndre Swift. That's a league that comes to mind. So I just wonder, maybe it's a reflective point for you guys and the audience. Have a look at your best teams. Are they the traditional Dynasty build? Is there a lot more running backs in the flex? We was doing the DFS, the fantasy game day stuff. We've done DraftKings stuff in the past. A lot of those winning lineups or lineups that have crushed, we're running back heavy. So yeah, just time to a bit more reflect. I'm making everybody do some reflection tonight. So we've got a mirror. Yeah, running backs. That is something I would really think about. I forgot your question, Mags, because I've just ranted, but I've had a nice time.
Thank you.
I forgot the question because I've been reflecting on my dynasty teams. No, I know it was about the wide receivers in general, and I think one of them has been injuries. I think we've had major injuries to obviously Nico Collins, Chris Godwin that was on a heater, Malik Neighbors, Mike Evans, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Tyreek Hill has been struggling with his quarterback position. Did even Justin Jefferson have an injury at one point? I can't remember now. But yeah, I think in general that the defenses I think have also changed this year. They're playing 2 high safeties. They've changed because they were getting torched mainly by Tyreek Hill last year. So I think there is natural regression in the wide receiver play. But it is really interesting. And when you mentioned that, Kev, about thinking about your teams that are doing well, honestly, there's several of mine that the best ones come to mind are the ones that have got the likes of Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson right now, that are actually, even in my flex spots, I've got running backs because they're the ones that remarkably have been staying healthy this year. You think of James Conner never last the season. Well, he's doing really well. Josh Jacobs has had injury. Everyone apart from Christian McCaffrey, bless him, is, really helping your fantasy teams.
Too soon.
And he is not, especially if you own Bucky Irving. What a guy! But yeah, that is a massive trend and something that we can, I think, look at to finish out the season. And again, into next year will be really interesting to see whether it comes back for the wide receivers or whether this is a trend that will continue or whether we're at the floor, whether it's going to get better. That is a really, really interesting one, Max. And I did tee up this next topic by mentioning his name there. And Kev, you're going to explain the topic, the title of this topic, because it is genius. But we're talking about Christian McCaffrey, known as CMC. But what do you want it to stand for tonight?
I mean, yeah, CMC, Christian McCaffrey. That's what you know him as, right? I'm taking a slight spin, very similar sounding, not. CMC, Championship Massacre Causation. So, bit of a mouthful, but come with me. I will explain what it means. Obviously, you should know what it means, but I'll try to help you through the next part of the show. So, McCaffrey, look, his Dynasty season's likely over, isn't it, with that injury? I think it's been, firstly, quite hilarious seeing all the GIFs and the memes, the Jordan Mason owners going absolutely wild, and then seeing he went on to IR, and it was like everybody else went wild in that league because obviously them idiots support Mason for a second, and then beating the chest proved to be wrong. Yeah, again, I was right. Woohoo on me. Isaac Grendo, like running back one rest of the season potentially. I'd be selling him for any second if I have that opportunity. I think he's got 3 good games and then a tough matchup week 17 against the Lions, I think. Yeah, if you can get a second for 3 games worth of output, then yeah, that is a must smash for me. I don't think there's many situations I'd be keeping Grendo. If he's come into your lineups as a contender, guess what? He wasn't a contender anyway. So CMC, I think about in 2020, 2023, he's likely on teams that finish first or second. Fast forward to this year, he's going to be on teams that are currently 6th or 7th. There is an English phrase, at 6s and 7s, which is all about describing a state of panic or confusion. And literally, that's what the injury has done to you. Like, I don't expect to see him on many first and second seeds. I think, as well as becoming that middling team with a CMC, it could be worse. Missing out on him could have forced you to blow it up from a 1 seed last year to a complete rebuild this year. So he has caused a massacre and he's destroyed championships. I'd be very, very shocked if he's on many 1 and 2 sides. So please check your rosters. And if he is, then I will own up to that. But I don't think I will be owning up to that. And then it get me thinking about the future for CMC. 29 years old in 2025. At this point, does it become a buy or a sell? And that's the sort of question I want to pose to you guys. But I want to give you my thoughts on this before I come to you both. So, personally, if I'm rebuilding going into next year, I want to buy Christian McCaffrey now. I want to pay 2 seconds for McCaffrey because we've seen this season the resurgence of the older running back. I do think McCaffrey is one of a kind. There is definitely risk there, but if I can pay 2 seconds, which, let's think about it. Who's giving you seconds? It's contenders. They're probably going to be late. If I can package 2 of those, give me McCaffrey all day. And if I'm a contender, I'm probably going to stick with him, you know. I'm in on McCaffrey. I think the injury puts a tough spin on him. But I'm here for the massacre. Give me all the massacre you got.
Yeah. Kev is selling Isaac Grendo and a second for Christian McCaffrey. Right now. In fact, he's going to use that second that he sold Jordan Mason for, package it with Isaac Grendo, and he's turned it into Christian McCaffrey, who's going to win him the championship in 2025. That is genius, Kev. The Dynasty mind. You're not named that for no reason whatsoever.
Thanks for bringing all that together for me, Ali. That's much appreciated.
That's okay, mate. That's what I'm here for. But yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to cost. You know, it's a it's like a dynasty stock where, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is probably at his age, heading into 29, is going to be valued maybe the lowest he's ever been, perhaps when he had the injury and he was on the shelf. Perhaps it was at this stage again, but it's got an absolute chance to spike, and probably not spike to where it has been in the past. But if he comes back healthy on a 49ers team that sorts themselves out in 2025, then he's going to be worth a first plus to contenders, or to your own team that will be adding Christian McCaffrey at some point in the season, maybe from the start of the season, hopefully. And yeah, I think it's genius. I think it's well said there, Kev. Is we like buying stocks when they're at their lowest, and I mean ultimately, I don't think it's a massive risk. I think he's going to be worth at least that when he comes back. He will be coming back. He's on a big contract with the 49ers. So I think you're buying at the lowest point probably right now. And there's not really that much risk unless he just suddenly says, I'm packing up and retiring. I can't do this anymore. I think it's a great move.
Are we sure Kyle Shanahan hasn't put him down as a game time decision? There's a chance he might play next week, right? We never really know. It is a shame he was, we're coming up to Christmas. Christian McCaffrey, haunted by ghosts of Panthers past there for sure. Just the old injury bug coming back to bite him. Pardon the pun with Panthers and biting, not the best, but it is sad to see. But Kev, I'm right with you. Go out and buy him now. Jordan Mason's not taking that job. Isaac Guerrero wasn't even the best running back at his college last year. He's not taking that job. He's going to start next year. His value's going to go up. You could buy him now. He could never play another snap, and you can sell him for a profit. It's easy business. Great idea, Kev. I'm going to do that right after the show. I'm going to try.
Love it. And we'll move on to the final topic. We could talk about more questions, and these are questions that are on the horizon. So players that are relevant right now, but could be in a different situation in 2025 or have some sort of questions associated with them. Again, one for each position. We'll start at quarterback, and we'll start with Noodle Arm himself, Kirk Cousins. I mean, what a guy. Absolutely destroyed the Buccaneers and then has done nothing for the rest of the season. I mean, what on earth do you do with Kirk Cousins right now in Dynasty? You've got Falcons fans that are already calling for Michael Penix to come in. His last 3 games, 0 passing touchdowns. Bear in mind, he threw, I think, 8 or 9 touchdowns in 2 games against the Buccaneers. 0 touchdowns to 6 picks and 4 fumbles in his last 3 games. Obviously, the Falcons are also on a 3-game losing streak, which is great. He also leads the league in interceptions now with 13, which is up there. And a fun fact that Desmond Ridder was terrible last year, but he only threw 12 picks. Cousins is up to 13 already. So, it's just not great. He looked terrible, including throwing a pick in the red zone, which was awful to the end zone. He just floating balls up. One of them was returned for a pick 6. And lads, what are we doing? Does he look a bit doomed now? I mean, he's got a revenge game coming up against Minnesota. I think he's going to be well up for that game. The Falcons really need to win right now. But looking at his contract next year, that looks like he's the starter. He's got a $40 million cap hit, $65 million in dead cap if they were to somehow get rid of him. So, quick question to you boys. What's the feeling with Cousins right now in Dynasty, and what are you doing with him?
A few weeks ago, I managed to sell Kirk Cousins on my worst Dynasty team ever rebuild over on the Dynasty Hot Seat. At the time, was really pushing hard to try and get a first-round pick for him. Really could not do that. Ended up getting, I think, 2 seconds and a little bit on top. Delighted with that. That seems to get better and better every single day. If I am the Falcons, I am calling everybody trying to trade Kirk Cousins. If you remember on this very show before the season, I had a hot take that Kirk Cousins would actually end up playing for a divisional rival, the Panthers, next year. Don't think it's going to happen. Bryce Young's earned himself a spot, but I think he's going to get traded. I think there's maybe a little bit of juice left in it, but I'm not giving you anything more than a second for Kirk Cousins, who's, 38? Maybe?
36.
Oh, just plays like a 38-year-old.
Yeah, like if you got to have a laugh, go on to sleep and look at Kirk Cousins' game log. It is brilliant. Like, look at the games against Tampa Bay. QB1, QB3. That is hilarious. His only other top 10 performance was against the Eagles in week 2 when there was playing defense on rookie mode, Madden. But yeah, I think how can you be confident in this guy other than the really favourable schedule in the playoffs? Weeks 15, 17 is really enticing if he can somehow play a Madden card and get his strength back. But he is looking like Matt Ryan did towards the end of his Falcons days and towards the end of his career. Just the power's gone. There's no rush upside ability. It's scary. Like, if you can flip Kirk Cousins for Jameis Winston, I think there's as much chance Winston's a starter next year as Cousins. I think he'll probably manage it till the rest of the season because I expect the Falcons to be in the playoffs or get very, very close. But worrying signs for Kirk.
Certainly is. I'll fly through these next 3 names. I've got 2 grizzled veterans and I've got a rookie. So the first veteran we'll talk about is Derrick Henry at the running back position. I mean, it's been an absolute revelation in Baltimore. That offense has been tailor-made for him. 1,407 yards right now and 15 touchdowns. On pace for 1,840 yards and 20 touchdowns on the season. But is he running out steam or is he just waiting for that snow to fall? Because since week 9, he's the RB12, but he's not had any boom games over the last 4 weeks. Just been okay. But he did catch 3 passes this week, which was wild for Derrick Henry's standards. So I think the question going forward, I'll pose to you boys, is obviously potential league winner in 2024. If you've got Derrick Henry and you're not in the playoffs, what the hell? He's got to be in one of those contender teams. The question is, will they run it back in 2025? Because, I mean, I have the feeling that regardless of how the situation pans out, they will run it back because it's worked out so well. He's due 10 million next season, but I mean, 10 million is still, probably not in the top 8, top 9, top 10 in terms of running back money for next year. So do you think they'll run it back next year? Have you got any problems with Derrick Henry and perhaps falling off a cliff or not going back to Baltimore?
Derrick Henry's leaving the NFL like on a stretcher, right? They're going to run him until he cannot run anymore. Why wouldn't you? And it's the same with all like your dynasty teams right now. If you have Derrick Henry, you should be in the playoffs probably. I think you should do the same. Do not sell that guy unless you get an unbelievable good offer. Ride him until the wheels fall off because he'll keep you a contender. Don't try and be cute and sell him for like 2 seconds and try and get a sneaky run. Just keep him and just put him in your running back slot every week and just be happy every single week. Like, that's what Baltimore should do. And that's what you should do. If you have Derrick Henry, you're not in the playoffs, someone out there is going to be desperate enough where you can probably get a late first. You might have to give something back, but you can probably get yourself a first. But he should be viable next year as well. But yeah, Derrick Henry, ride till the wheels come off, and no matter what the situation.
I'm not writing him off again because I've wrote him off last 4 or 5 years, and yeah, it's not turned out great this year. I think are the wheels falling off? I would say the schedule's got harder, and that's why the performance has dipped a little bit. Not calling him a fast track bully or whatever the phrase is, but yeah, they said the schedule has got harder, and we've seen a dip in performance. Plus, they've not had the bye week yet. The 13 weeks just pounding away. Yeah, he might have that resurgence again after a week's rest. I think he'll be back. I think he's going to be on contenders in your leagues. All I would caution is if you're a contender and you're looking to get younger this off-season, just be careful who you pivot to, because if you did it last season, you probably pivot to someone like Jonathan Brooks at a similar value to Derrick Henry. If you did that on a contender, well, you've had a mare, haven't you, with the production he's given this season. So if you are pivoting from Henry, all I would say is make sure you're getting excellent production in whatever you're pivoting to on a contender.
13 weeks just pounded away. Sounds like Bonnie Blue, right?
Love that. She's awful, by the way. But,
yeah, the worst. Yeah, I prefer Derrick Henry any day of the week.
Me too. We'll move on to the rookie. So we'll talk about Malik Neighbours. Obviously, completely different question to Derrick Henry, and a guy that's been certainly elite the first few weeks of the season, where he was on an absolute tear with Daniel Jones, who's obviously now not his quarterback, or not will ever be his quarterback again. It's going to be Drew Lock or Tommy Cutlets for the rest of the season, and who knows in 2025. I think ultimately they are going to try to draft a rookie quarterback there next year, which could work out. Two young guys, build up that chemistry, the relationship through the next several years. But you're looking at the top of the draft. I mean, they're in position for one of the two rookie quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, that are touted to go in round one. But really, I mean, if perhaps they were to miss out on, they win a couple of games and they miss out on those two guys, what's the route for Malik Neighbours in 2025? Or what's the best route? Do you think? I'll pitch it to you. Got a couple of questions. One, would you prefer for Malik Neighbours to have a rookie quarterback to build that chemistry with in 2025, or would you prefer it to be a bridge quarterback in 2025, someone like a Sam Darnold, a Jacoby Brissett, maybe Jameis Winston, and maybe they tank in 2025 and try and get Archie Manning or someone like that? And then the second question is, where is he in your dynasty ranks? Is he right? Is he in tier 1, or is he just below tier 1 for you boys?
Ooh, good question about the rankings. I'll have to pull up my rankings to see that, actually, Ali. But while I'm doing that, I am really starting to come around to the idea of seeing, just the more I watch him, seeing Shedeur Sanders and Malik Neighbours paired up together, I think is a real match made in heaven. Shedeur Sanders, an incredibly accurate quarterback. Malik Neighbours, incredibly good at getting open. Those two things alone together just make it sort of a match made in absolute heaven. I think that Shedeur Sanders is one of the only people that will be able to come into an absolute circus like New York and not really be fazed by it too much. There's probably an opening on that staff for his dad to come in if they really want that to happen as well, which we have heard is potentially a package deal. It just seems like a fit that is right. So he would be the one that I would choose. I think Cam Ward might be unable to deal with the pressure with that offensive line currently at the Giants. So I think Sanders is the better choice for them. So hopefully that can happen. If not, it's kind of like, I mean, we talked about Kirk Cousins earlier. Is he a guy that could be okay in there with Malik Neighbours? We know he does like to pick a target and stick with him. So Malik Neighbours could benefit from that. I can tell you, if there is any kind of dip on Malik Neighbours right now, I'm going in and I'm buying him. I've got him sort of sitting around the same kind of level as Nico Collins and CeeDee Lamb. He's not in that first tier. I know he was people's wide receiver 1 for a while. I thought that was maybe a little bit too soon. So he's in my second tier of wide receivers with that CeeDee Lamb and Nico Collins. I'm not quite sure where I put him. Probably at the bottom of that tier for now, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, how do we unpack this one? We've gone from Bonnie Blue to a team that plays in blue and gets absolutely rattled every week. So that's the first thing that came to mind. And then the second thing, I mean, you've got a Sun and Fab combination. That's also Bonnie Blue, isn't it? So absolutely crazy. I think I was going to say veteran, and then Mags made that great point about the Sanders package, and you can totally see it happening. My preference would be someone like, I don't know, Darnold or Winston. They're the guys that spring to mind as veterans. But yeah, Sanders there will be fine. I'm a bit more skeptical on Cam Ward, and actually the whole class is pretty shaky, to be completely honest. He's still in tier 1 for me. It's quite big tier. There's potentially 5 in that tier for me, but I'm a little bit more generous and have bigger tiers and sort of the small ones, big ones, smaller ones. Again, Bonnie Blue, it was awful.
Right. We'll move on to the final guy. What a guy, Mark Andrews, tight end 6 on the season. Not always felt like that. He's had 7 touchdowns. In fact, 1 more than he had in 2023. So, I mean, what on earth what have we been worried about, guys? I saw a tweet sum it up really well. So Mark Andrews has been through this in the past 12 months. He broke his fibula, dislocated his ankle. He then played football 11 weeks later. He saved someone's life on a plane. He was then in a car accident that caused him to miss the end of training camp. He's the second in touchdowns among tight ends, and he's doing all this as a type 1 diabetic. So what a guy, Mark Andrews. But if you've owned him, which, I mean, I own him in lots of places, it's been really, really frustrating for most part, especially the first half of the season where he had a few blank games. Then he comes back and he seems to be touchdown dependent. More recently, he's been a bit more like the Mark Andrews that we all know and love and have ranked highly. But just in whole, this offense, apart from Derrick Henry and Lamar, has just been a what the fuck. It's been Zay Flowers. I mean, he's been up and down this year. Generally been okay. They traded for Deontay Johnson, and I mean, where has he been this year? Isaiah,
I think.
I mean, I'm not surprised. What is going on? Isaiah Likely, his snaps have been up this year, but his usage has been all over the place. Mark Andrews' snaps in general has been down this year, but it's nice to see this week they actually both combined for 15 targets. They both scored a touchdown for the first time this season, and I think it's just a really pivot point where Isaiah Likely's got 1 more season left on his rookie contract. He's 5 years younger than Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews turns 30 next year, and he will be in the final year of his contract. So I think we're approaching crunch period for both of these guys. So quick question is, who have you got ranked higher in Dynasty? Is it Mark Andrews or is it Isaiah Likely? And do you still have Mark Andrews ranked highly? And is he someone that you're looking to how much confidence have you boys got in Mark Andrews in playoff time?
So if you asked everyone this question a year ago, there is no doubt about any of the answers. All right. Now, Mark Andrews is an interesting guy because I went over the wide receivers earlier. I also had a quick peek at the tight ends. In particular, I looked at Mark Andrews. So through the same amount of time, and you can check this if you want, according to Fantasy Pros. This time, so at the minute, Mark Andrews is tight end 6 with 134 fantasy points. This time last year, Mark Andrews was tight end 6 with 135 fantasy points. He's 1 point worse than he was last year. What is all the fuss about? Like, why? Yeah. Why were we worried? Oh, you're right. Yeah, Mark Andrews to be fine. If you weren't worried about him last year, you shouldn't be worried this year. It'll be good. Don't worry.
I can't wait for the Netflix on Mark Andrews' year in the life of. That's going to be mightily impressive. I think. To sum it up, what was the question? Mark Andrews, was the first one. Yes was the second, and I think yes was the third. So nothing's really changed other than that scary, weird 2 weeks where it was like a delayed post-traumatic stress, wasn't it? Like from all the shit he's gone through. Apart from that 2 weeks, he's been absolutely fine, and it's tight end, so we're all good. Love him.
We do, and we love a tight end on this show, so it's a good way to wrap up the show. Move away.
She's not a tight end.
Move away from her.
She's like a little princess. She's awful.
She is, and with that does bring us to the end of tonight's show, where we have recapped Week 13's action as we roll into Week 14, the final week for most people for their regular season. and week 15 is where the money is won. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Fantasy Wildcard and at Wildcard Dynasty, and join us for our show every Tuesday. Thank you once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you again soon.
When you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.